Hello everyone and welcome to this video. In this video, we will going to learn how to perform bulk loading in Snowflake with the help of Snowflake copy into command. So let's get started. So what is copy into command and how we are going to use it? Then copy into command is used to load data into the table from files like CSV, JSON, Parquet, etc. that is stored in a stage, or we can use it to unload data from a table into files in a stage. And in this video, we will see how to load the data into Snowflake table from Snowflake managed stage, or we can say Snowflake internal stage. To do this, there are two main steps. First, we need to upload our local files into stage using put command, and then we need to load that staged files into table using the copy into command. You can also see the syntax to copy data into table from stage. Now, while copying the data into table from stage, there are several copy options available provided by the Snowflake. Let's discuss the first copy option on error. There are five options in it, like continue, skip file number percentage, and abort statement. And by default, the value is abort statement for the on error option. Now, before getting started doing hands-on, I have some files on my local system that we will going to upload in a Snowflake stage. Let's see what we have in these files. So in the orders.csv file, we have around 7 columns and 20 rows. Similarly, in the orders2.csv file, we have around 7 columns and 20 rows. And in error underscore orders.csv file, we have around 7 columns and 20 rows, but we have some bad records as well in this file. For example, here in the total amount column, all the values are the floating point values, but here we have some string. And similarly, in the quantity column of integers, we have certain byte records. So in general, there are total 3 byte records in this file. Now let's get started with creating the database into Snowflake. We use a public schema. And I'm creating the orders table with the same schema as we have in the CSV file. Let's create a Snowflake internal stage. Let's list that stage. So currently we don't have any of the files loaded. So I will be using SnowSQL PUT command to load the files. Put file and the file location. And I will be giving here star because I wanted to upload all these files into Snowflake stage, and then at the rate stage name. And I don't want compression. So I will write auto compress equals to false. As you can see, all the files are uploaded. Let's check into Snowflake. As you can see, all the files are uploaded. Now getting started with the copy into command. So copy into the table name from at the rate stage name, and the file format we need to give as type equals to CSV because all the files are CSV. Then field delimiter equals to comma, and skip header equals to 1 because we have the headers in all the CSV files. Then we need to give the list of all the CSV files that we need to load, and the on error option equals to abort statement. So abort statement means if Snowflake encounters any error, then it stops that copy operation and returns the error. This is the default option. Let's execute this and we will get an error. So as we can see here, numeric value 7 plus is not recognized. And the data should not be loaded. So 0 rows. Second option is continue. So continue means Snowflake skips only the problematic rows and the rest of the rows it will load. Let's execute. So from the orders and orders 2.csv file, all the rows are loaded. But from the error orders.csv, we have only 17 rows loaded and 3 bad records are skipped. Let's see the table. So we have the 57 rows. Let's truncate the table. The third option is skip file. So skip file means if any error is found in a file, then Snowflake skips that entire file and continues loading the remaining files. Let's execute. So orders and orders 2.csv are fully loaded, but error orders is skipped. No rows loaded. Okay, 0. Let's truncate the table. Now the fourth option is skip file number. So skip file number means Snowflake skips the entire file only if the number of errors equal to or exceeds the specified number. So I will write here 3 and we have the 3 byte records in the error orders.csv file. So it will skip that particular file and the rest of the 2 files it will load. So it have loaded orders and orders2.csv and this have error orders is skipped because the threshold is met. Let's truncate this table. Then we have on error as a skip file number percentage. So it means Snowflake skips the entire file if the percentage of error extends the specified percentage. Here we have specified the 20%. Let's execute this. So here error limit when setting as 20% is becoming 4. And we have total 3 bad records. So it will not skip that particular file. So it will load all the good records and it will skip the bad records. Because 3 divided by 20 into 100, that is 15 percentage. And this is, we have specified as 20 percentage. So it will not skip that file. This was all about the on error. Now next is validation mode. It is used to validate files without actually loading data into the table. So it helps you to identify data errors before performing any load. And there are 3 options in it: return errors, return all errors, and return n rows. Let's see this in action. Basically, it's validate the files instead of loading them. Let's use the schema, creating the table, list the stage, and I will create one more copy of the error orders.csv file. And I will upload that file into Snowflake stage. So error orders 2.csv is uploaded and rest all are skipped because we already have that in the stage. Now let's copy that error orders.csv file data into the orders, and while I'm giving on error as continue option. So it will skip the bad records and load the good records. And now coming to the validation mode as return errors options. So return errors means this validates the files and return only the errors found during the validation, and no data is loaded into the table. Let's execute this. So as you can see, it have written all the errors from the error orders.csv files. Total we have the 3 byte records, so it have generated 3 errors. It will not load any kind of data. This is just the validation. Now coming to the return all errors. Let's execute this. So before executing, return all errors means it also validates without loading data, but it returns every error across all files, including files that may have been partially loaded in previous copy into operations, as we have performed above the copy into operation. Let's see the output. So while executing return errors, we see only the error records.csv file bad records only. But while performing return all errors, we see the records of the error orders 2.csv file that have been previously loaded using the copy into command. So this is the difference between return errors and return all errors. And the third option is return n rows. So return n rows means this option doesn't validate errors. Instead, it parses the file and returns the first n rows as Snowflake reads them without loading them into the table. Let's execute this. So it have returned 3 rows. Let's change it to 4. Let's change to 5. So Snowflake have read the five rows and one of them is bad record. So it have generated an error. And now let's remove this error orders2.csv file from the stage. Let's verify. Okay. So this was all about the validation mode. Now next is return failed only. So this option specifies that whether to return files in the output that have failed to load. There are two options in it, true and false, and by default it is false. Let's see this in action. Use the schema, create the table, list the stage. Now here I'm giving return failed only equals to false. This is the by default option. And here on error is continue. So if any errors are there in the files, it will skip that rows and it will load the good records. Let's execute this. So it is giving for all the files output or the output for all the files like orders.csv, orders2.csv, and error orders.csv, and which is loaded and which is partially loaded. Let's verify 57 rows. Let's create again. And now I'm giving return failed only equals to true. So it will give you the detailed information for only the failed files or partially loaded files. So here we cannot see now orders and orders2.csv files. We can see the file count, but we can see detailed about the partially loaded files. Let's verify. So this was all about return failed only. Now next is size limit. It defines maximum size in bytes of data to be loaded. So when the limit is exceeded, it stops loading, and by default there is no limit on the amount of data to be loaded. Let's see this in action. Using the public schema, creating the table, list the stage. And now we have here the error orders, and now I'm see the pattern option is available for the copy option, and I'm considering only orders.csv and orders2.csv file. Now here the orders.csv file and orders2.csv file have the size of 1072 bytes each, and let's give it the size limit as 1000. So it will load only one of the file and it will skip the rest file. Let's execute. So it have loaded order.csv file only. It have not loaded orders2.csv file. If I increase by 500, then it will load the second as well. So orders2.csv file is also loaded. This was all about the size limit. Next is truncate column. So it states whether to truncate strings from the source data that exceeds the target table column length. There are two options in it, true and false, and by default it is false. Let's see this in action. Let's use a public schema. Let's create the orders table, list the stage, and here the by default option I'm giving truncate columns equals to false. And here in the table I've taken payment method as only of the file length. But if we see in the CSV file, we have the length more than 5 for the payment method column. So while executing, this will generate an error. So user character line limit exceeded. It will not load any data. Now I'm giving truncate columns equals to true. Let's execute and select the table. Now you can see in the payment method column, only the records are being truncated to only file length. So this was all about the truncate columns. Next is force. So when force is set to false, then it will skip the file that Snowflake has already loaded. And when it's set to true, it will again load that particular file. Let's see this in action. Use public schema, create table and stage. And here I'm giving force equals to false. This is the by default option. It will simply load the data. Let's check that. And let's execute again this copy into command. So we are seeing the output as copy executed with 0 files. So it have not processed any of the files. But what if we want to load again? Then we need to provide force equals to true. Now the files are loaded again. Let's verify. The records are 80. So this was about the force. Now next is include metadata option. So while loading the data from files into table, if we want to include or load file metadata, then we can use this option. By default, it is set to none, so no metadata columns are populated automatically. Let's see this in action. Use a public schema, create table, list the stage. Now here I'm adding 3 more columns into the table: file name, file row number, and file last modified. And here in this copy into command, copy into table name from stage, and here we have include underscore metadata, and the column names that we have explicitly added into the table that we have specified here, and we are using the by default Snowflake providing this column. So metadata dollar file name, metadata dollar file row number, and metadata dollar file last modified. So now when we are including include underscore metadata option into the copy command, we need to use the match by column name. And the options for the match by column name are case sensitive, case insensitive, and none. By default, it is none. Here we have given as case insensitive. So the stage file column names and the table column names uh, can be case insensitive. And while we are including match by column name, we need to include here parse header equals to true, and we need to remove the skip header equals to 1. And we also have to include error on column count mismatch equals to false. Why? Because as we know, we in the table in the CSV file only we have the 7 columns, and later we have added these 3 columns into the table. So if we are not using this option, then we will get an error of the column count mismatch. So we need to include this one. Let's execute this. So rows are loaded and let's see the output. So as we can see, 3 more columns are added: file name, file row number, and file last modified, the file name from which the record have been loaded, the file row number, and the file last modified date and time. So this was all about include metadata option. Now next is purge option. So it states whether to remove files from the stage after it is being loaded. By default, it is set to false, which means source files are not removed after loading. Let's see this in action. Use a schema, create a table, list the stage, and I'm setting here purge equals to false, which is the by default option. So while copying the data, it will not remove the files from the stage. Let's verify the records and let's see the stage. So it have not removed the data. But if I use purge equals to true, then it will remove the stage data. Let's create again a table. Let's use purge equals to true. And if we try to now list the stage, it have removed the orders and orders2.csv file because it is being loaded. So this was all about the Snowflake copy options. And if you found this video helpful, please do like it and do subscribe to this channel. Thank you.